Hi, well, welcome everybody to our fourth and final committee vodcast for 2021. This is a series of conversations with Strata experts about how to build effective committees. The focus of our conversations will be around the human factors rather than the legal requirements, especially in today's discussion when we talk about community events. We invite you to pop in any questions in the chat box, and if we don't get them to today, we will have the answers for you in next month's conversation. We welcome back today Nick Abbey with his experience from large multi-layered subdivisions, and Catherine Leza with experience of multi-storey apartment living, many project improvements, and with a particular passion for sustainability. Catherine is also the first lot owner to become a president of SCA WA. Thank you both again for giving up your time and sharing your experiences with us today. In episode 1, we explored why people volunteer to be on a committee, their experience of joining a committee, and what were the most important steps for a committee to do from day one, managing your manager. Recapping, there were 5 important steps. The first one, which we discussed in episode 2, was building relationships, manager and the committee. In episode 3, we looked at creating a work plan for the year, an action list to be achieved. And in today's session, we're going to look at keeping communication open and transparent, and we're going to weave in some celebration and community events. Then the fourth step was having an induction pack for committee and one for the strata manager and one for the chair, and then creating handover from the outgoing committee to an incoming committee. So those 5 steps and 5 necessary ingredients are all part of an effective, efficient committee. And we promised that we would unpack each of those, so that's what we've been doing in our monthly podcast. Given the festive season is upon us, let's explore from our list the keeping communication open and transparent and see if we can't include a festive theme. We've certainly got some festive hats happening. From my experience of being both the secretary and the strata manager, and also that conduit to hear both positive and negative comments from owners, the more open, transparent and frequent the communication is, the better people sleep at night. That means my telephone's not ringing and I'm not getting swamped with thousands of emails. So I certainly see the value of that open, transparent and frequent communication. The value of a simple newsletter, informal but informative, reduces so much extra work. As one year comes to an end and a fresh year starting, what sort of communications should a committee be considering? So that's our first question to look at. What particularly would you be thinking about communicating at the festive season, the end of a year? It's been a challenging year, of course, and of course, so with the new year coming forward. So, Catherine, can you want to share your experience of multiple buildings that you've been in? I'm not sure how many of them were over the festive period, but could you just like to share a little bit about what did work, what didn't work, and in particular, how diversity was handled?
So we've tried various things over the years, as you can imagine. So one of the things we found was putting out a newsletter to say specifically, it's the festive season, please wrap up your prawns and make sure they don't smell when they go in the bin, and, various things like that. Be careful of overloading the bins, making sure people remember when the bins get emptied. That seems to be a huge issue at Christmas time, the amount of waste that comes. So that was, we did a newsletter once that way, and I got a bit of pushback with people saying, well, you can't tell me what to do with my waste and all that kind of stuff. So we had to reframe that. So we got a little bit of a softer reminder going now, if I get the chance to do it, which is just be mindful of the waste rather than being prescriptive. So I learned not to be so prescriptive in the suggestions. So that was that. We haven't in my current building, actually there is a bit of diversity in terms of language. So the notices around the bins and everything are in different languages, which is great. But generally we haven't put any notices in any other language other than English under people's doors or in letterboxes at this point. Yeah.
Okay, what about in like in sort of Christmas events itself? Like, is there a Christmas tree up? Has there been, just internal, sort of a get together in the foyer, the bump spaces, decorations, that sort of like, is there a sort of a Christmas spirit that happens? Or, and again, if I sort of look from a diversity perspective, and is that then shared with a number of different cultures throughout the building?
We have in the buildings where I've been, where there's more of a community feel, they definitely do decorate for Christmas. So somebody puts up the Christmas tree, somebody's putting up some lights or something. There's a little bit more decoration going on, and that's a bit of fun, I think. But it does get a bit burdensome if it's just one person's issue every year. So that's good. But I think it looks festive, and generally most people comment that when the decorations come down, everything seems a bit bare. So generally it's good. And usually there's some sort of get together. We attempt to have maybe we don't call it Christmas drinks, but we might call it summer drinks, like a summer drink by the pool, or a get together, bring something to drink and a plate of something, and have a chat with your neighbours. So that's a bit of fun, yeah.
And is it driven by the committee, or is the committee actually receiving an application from, level 2, for instance, for permission to put up these decorations, or is it driven by the committee to have this?
Generally driven by the committee, in my experience, yeah, and that's in several different states.
Okay, very interesting. Nick, so you're in a slightly different position, being in an estate with certainly a wider community, and diversity would certainly be an extra factor there as well. How does and I know with you have a street Christmas party. What else have you got happening, and who drives it? And and how is diversity accounted for?
So thanks, Julie. And look, wish I was where you happen to be at the moment. It looks so lovely there, Julie, but I'm just here at home, of course, surrounded by Zoom meetings. And welcome everyone again. We love these sessions, I must say. Look, some comments. Firstly, with one of the owners' corporations I'm associated with, we've always had an action plan, and our community is one of the goal areas. And that means continuing to provide a range of community events. And I emphasise both owners' corporation and residents' initiatives. And I'd like to say a little bit more about that in a moment. It includes partnership work with local council. It also includes, do we have a portal or Facebook page or whatever in terms of how we continue to build community and connect people. And we've always provided a range of community events. And obviously the benefit there is the increased sense of community. And of course, it can be as simple as a barbecue. And many of these barbecues, especially a street-based barbecue, it's a suggestion of a resident. And so long as all lot owners are aware that the owners corporation is prepared to perhaps defray some of those costs, that's really important, and then you're more likely to have residents' initiatives, of course. The other thing about it, it's really important that the committee and manager see these events as an opportunity to get to know their community much better. And, that's really important if it's a large, one of the OCs I'm associated with, over 800 lots. In my own street, it's 25 lots. But even with 25 lots, it's just amazing. We had a barbecue a couple of weeks ago, and just the way it brought so many people together. A key question, obviously, do we spend enough time seeking to connect people, including through through social events? In one OC, there was increased participation year after year. So we're able to measure this, and that's important too, without being too managerial about it, but, measuring the success in a sense, and holding up a mirror, to our community. This is fabulous. So that included a Christmas party, Easter egg hunt, wine and cheese night, and a school holiday program. It's also important to discuss events at the annual general meeting, as well as being an issue as part of a community or lot owner survey. And a lot owner survey may be as simple, obviously, as just an email, or it might be, a Survey Monkey thing or whatever. But communication begins with lot owners' ideas and suggestions. And an AGM shouldn't be too perfunctory or too bureaucratic. There should be an opportunity for ideas and suggestions to to be shared. Because we might be missing something, you know, demographic changes, the age of our community, family events, or they largely for younger people, children, older residents, how culturally inclusive are our events and so on. So we need to learn from our community as to what they want in the first place. Just some final comments. I think that the increased number of community events becomes a sort of a bit of a success indicator. If they're all run by the committee or, you know, led by the committee, well, that's a good thing, and maybe that will happen in perpetuity. But we always, like, for example, in our community, we have a car show, and that began with residents. And the Owners Corporation, the manager, assisted with, you know, getting the council planning permits and all of that for the event. And that was really important support. But again, it was what residents themselves wanted to organise and how the OC could seed this, support this, promote this. So again, making it clear that the Owners Corporation can support, budget permitting, obviously, and depending on the size of the OC, residents' events and ideas.
That's fascinating, Nick. Nick, I want to ask you a question. Do you ask the local fireys or the local police or the local member to come along to your meetings?
A really good point. And in this street, for example, we'll have an event early in the new year and local police will be invited to it. And in the past, with the larger Owners Corporation I've been associated with, we'd always make sure local member of parliament and local councillors were invited. It's so important. And of course, it then requires a manager or the committee chairperson to be circulating as well, ensuring that, you know, if the local councillor is present, that she or he is being introduced to residents and has an opportunity to hear from residents as well as to what their issues or suggestions might be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great that you do that. I remember in one of the buildings we had the local fireys and we invited various people along, and I just thought it was just the best thing ever. Yeah. How great, I get to meet my local fiery. How good.
Yeah, really important. Really important.
In my in one of the states that I have an association with, we've done the same, and we have had the local fire brigade, or the CFA as it is there, come in, and that was, they did rides around the truck, you know, and the kids could climb all over it. Council came, and they were particularly focused on the organics, so they used it as a way of talking and communicating with the residents about changes coming through waste and why, you know, we also have the community garden, and that's a separate institute course, and they came and they did that. And then from a cultural perspective, there's tapping into that diversity. We also had then a number of the local cultures come with, say, their dancing of their region, singing from their region, and they would sort of set up stalls around as well. One of the local cafes provided ice creams and etc. You know, so it was a real community, a real community thing. And yes, the Owners Corporation did just as you suggested, Nick, and that was do the planning permits required, you know, the events, all filling in all the paperwork, making sure the public liability, the insurer was notified, doing all the checking if the contractors who came, that they had the appropriate public liability, etc. You know, so that was the contribution from the AC side. I know we've got a few managers on the call, so we're not talking about the resolution required in order to carry any of this off, whether your rules permit it, etc. Because we just want to talk about, again, the human factors and the importance of community building, that and how it can drive a successful community and a successful committee. You can work out the legal stuff later. You know, forge ahead and do it and worry about the rest later. Thinking about, you know, continuing the theme around that communication, Catherine, what are the sorts of different methods of communication with, and again, I'm mindful because you've been in 15 different, you know, owners corporations in different states. And so what sort of, you know, communication portals? I mean, Nick mentioned Facebook, and, you know, some of the management companies have portals and etc. So what have you used and been experienced, and what did you think worked really well, and perhaps again which ones didn't work as well?
Yeah, it's a really good point. We've tried lots of different things. And so I find that we can't dictate how people want their information, right? Some people want it via Facebook. Some people want it email. Some people want it under their door. Some people want to see a notice in the lift. Some people want somebody to verbally remind them. It's not our job to dictate how people want their information. It is our job to make sure we're effectively communicating. So some buildings, like for instance, at the moment in the building I am now, they send a lot of emails out from the strata manager to the owners, but the residents get totally excluded. They don't ever see those emails. And in a building where you've got 75% investors, it's, you know, you're missing a huge cohort of people to communicate to. So that's the first point. Secondly, so I don't think that works, right? So emails for official things, maybe AGM business and stuff, but certainly for social events, it's not working. So I think lift notices, I think with lift notices, you do miss some people because some people don't get in the lift if they live on the ground floor or so on. So that you also have to be cognizant of that. Maybe if you have a bin room that people go to, maybe you can put a notice outside the bin room. Facebook, I think, works well. I found that some stratas are reticent to do Facebook because they think they're going to get a lot of, you know, let's call it trolling or negative comments. But that's not been my experience. My experience is people will read what's going on Facebook and pretty much not comment. They'll use some other method to communicate something needs doing. So I find Facebook pretty good. Again, I don't think we get all cohorts on that because I think the very young and the very elderly don't really use Facebook. So, you know, I think lift notices are good. I think a suggestion box is good if you have one somewhere easy. The internal portal system, if you have one, also works. But again, it's few and far between that use it. I think the AGM is probably the best tool because everybody's there and notices under the door. So, you know, really, we've tried all different things, but if it's an important thing, there's nothing beats putting a notice under somebody's door. Although, Nick, in your building, I'm not sure I want to go under 800 doors, but like in my building, you know, I can go under 50, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment?
Who's that?
My name's Anna.
Yes, Anna.
I think Facebook is fraught with danger. With a lot of the buildings that we've had, unfortunately, people are assuming, making assumptions, and all of a sudden people feed on a negative comment and either the building manager or the committee or the strata manager are already under the bus. So if someone's going to have a Facebook with a building in a positive manner, one of the committee members needs to take absolute responsibility for it, and they must stop immediately any defamatory material that is publicised, because that hurts all parties.
It's true, Anna, and I think that nowadays you have tools on Facebook where you can turn off comments or you can monitor them or whatever. So yes, I generally think of these tools as positive communication tools. So yes, I agree with your point.
And also depends on being proactive, where certainly our experience of Facebook and other social media over many years and in different sizes of OCs, sometimes it's been very problematic and other times it's just been a dream run and everything in between. What owners often respect, of course, is where there is a committee person, or particularly the chairperson, who's prepared to make the time to moderate and to respond to any queries or concerns really quickly. And that tends to make it a positive, engaging environment. But are there risks always? Of course, absolutely.
Unfortunately, sometimes not all committee members know what's happening in the background with a strata company or a building manager. So I think there's a place for dispute and grievances and a place for Facebook.
Yep, I agree.
Yes, and I think Facebook does come with those problems, but it is about how you communicate with the community now, and how it is policed. And it generally would be that it is a resident be it a committee member, like it's set up by the people who live there rather than, say, by the committee as a method of choice, unless they are going to administer it as well. But yeah, there's a number of buildings that will have their own Facebook that's nothing to do with the owners corporation or its framework, you know, i.e. the committee or whatever. And that's the one they do all their, particularly the social arrangements on, that I've seen anyway. But I've also seen, and there's, you know, plenty of disastrous cases, as we know, in particularly interstate, in Fair Work for bullying and defamation and all those sorts of things going on. So, of course, that awareness is becoming more like that too. So people are getting more cautious on what they're saying.
I did see Facebook used pretty well one time where we had a blackout in the building, and people were very quick to ask on Facebook, is it just my apartment, or, you know, is it everybody? And that was great, because a lot of people piled on there pretty quick, and we were able to get the Western Powers, you know, little thing to say there was a power outage. And that was a quick way to get a lot of information out quickly. So there are some uses for it, but I'm not saying it's the only tool, and it certainly doesn't reach all the cohorts in the building, for sure.
So maybe social media could be a topic for another time, because we have many thoughts and experiences about it, and it'd be worth perhaps revisiting this.
Yes, I agree. We'll put it on the list for a future conversation. Yeah. And I think Catherine's comments about not everybody uses any one particular method of communication, and therefore, in order to communicate effectively, one actually has to set it up by using a number of platforms in order to share that information. Just like you suggested, Catherine, some can still be printed on lifts, or, you know, some buildings will have big screens that replace the you know, the A4 printout blue tack in the lift. So there are sort of methods of getting different messages out there, but I think that's the real message. It's not relying on one language and not one form of delivery. It's got to be in multiple, most likely in multiple languages, but also, or at least pictorial, if it's not multiple languages, so that it can be more easily understood and delivered in different ways. Nick, what sorts of methods have you used? As Catherine pointed out, you've got 800 doors that probably stretch some kilometres in order of making for hand delivery of things. What sort of methods have you used there, and what seemingly has worked?
Well, perhaps particularly in the context of how the committee has a relationship with lot owners and vice versa. Obviously, process is really important, and then new possibilities may emerge. And that may mean asking questions and using tools such as a survey, Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, or just an email to all lot owners and tenants. And I emphasise tenants as well, you know, so how that communication takes place. Focusing on what we can all learn and develop, do and achieve together. I love community surveys, so long as less is more, it's done simply, and whatever, you know, depending on the size of the OC. And for any issues that lot owners and tenants rate with high importance, what specific actions they would like to see, and so on. So many of these things begin with some kind of survey. It might be around a particular theme, like traffic management or road safety, if that's an issue in an owners corporation or the immediate area. Or it could be a broad survey that looks at a range of issues, everything from, you know, maintenance of common property, appearance of lots, car parking, drainage, safety, security, noise, etc. I just find the richness of data, whether it's a very small OC or a large OC, is phenomenal, and it can often then inform, you know, further analysis by the committee, and it may even inform an action plan or a strategic plan. Also, some thoughts about AGMs. Some AGMs for lot owners can still be perceived as, to some extent, perfunctory and bureaucratic box ticking and approval of preset motions, rather than a forum for real conversation and considering the issues that matter to lot owners and residents. And I'm not posing one against the other. There's the business of the day and everything under the Act that we need to do at an AGM, but simple things like the covering letter for an AGM, Is it invitational? Is it community focused? Is there an emphasis on how lot owners can participate and contribute? Or are we largely hearing reports and signing off on those and various motions and resolutions? And also, an effective committee obviously facilitates community forums. So we've had forums, I've mentioned already, road safety, traffic management, community safety, crime prevention, connecting local lot owners to local government councillors and council staff around such issues. These are the kinds of things that are really powerful and practical in ensuring that there's a very strong triadic relationship between the committee, the manager and lot owners, and that there are no gaps there, that increasingly people recognise and they see the visibility of this, that all three are the basis of a great community. And even simple things like making sure that the chairperson's contact details are visible, in emails and so on. These are the things that make life easier and ensure that everyone feels that they're being heard and that their ideas and suggestions can be shared and may inform the committee's decision making.
That's really interesting. So here's a question for both of you. How do we know we've succeeded? What's our KPI, if you like, for success? Is it, because Catherine, you mentioned that the AGM was a good place because everybody was there. Our experience on the manager side would say that, the turnout is really poor. So, and I wouldn't be relying on the AGM as my method of communication. But Nick, in your experience then, by changing the invite of the AGM to invite people for their opinion, does that provide you with the attendance? I mean, have you seen, compared to when you first came in, has the attendance at the AGM grown because it's more inclusive and you're seeking people's opinion, or do people just still not turn up to the AGM because of the focus and we need to run separate forums like you've suggested there too? I'll start with Catherine and then you can flick to Nick.
I think participation clearly is the measure, but it doesn't need to be participation at the AGM. Sometimes if the building's running really well, then people don't turn up to the AGM because they're just quite happy with how it's running and they send a proxy and it's all good. So, it can go both ways. More, Nick's point is correct. It's participation in events and social things and understanding what's going on. There was one building where when you have to replace the carpet in the lobby areas and you need access to every single apartment's door has to be open for the carpet to be connected underneath. One time we had a building where everybody was totally so well informed that the carpet people didn't have to come back for one door. And they said they've never had that happen to them ever in 20 years doing carpet in strata. So that's a measure of success. So it's participation.
Yeah.
With Zoom, we have found that we're getting a bigger participation. So when we send out a AGM or we send out 3 reminders about the date rather than just sending it out once. And definitely, whether people have all been home through COVID or whatever reasons, but definitely the numbers have grown exponentially. And I think reminding people 2 or 3 times prior, whether it is to submit their voting papers or to just attend, and to also ask questions at least 72 hours prior to that annual general meeting. So that sets a forum for discussion on the things that owners actually do want to discuss. And the committee can also be prepared rather than sometimes being thrown under the bus and can't, or we or managers can't answer on the spot, and it doesn't go down well.
Totally agree. Bearing in mind that all organisations and all communities have baggage that goes back to the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 1950s, even the way agendas are organised for meetings. Sometimes they're very formalistic and sometimes they need to be. But we've always made a point of debureaucratising, if that's a word, the kinds of meetings we organise, including AGMs, and that AGMs have the business and the financial reports, everything else, and that's the bread and butter, and we understand that, and we do that professionally and efficiently. At the same time, we ensure that there are opportunities to discuss the kinds of community issues that matter to lot owners and tenants. And also, it's not just the AGM, it's also committee meetings. Do we actually invite lot owners to make suggestions prior to the next meeting? And likewise, doesn't necessarily mean, like the minutes, of course, are circulated, but are there edited highlights of the key decisions and discussions that are provided through the Facebook page or through the internal portal or whatever? So that there's a process underway where we're trying to make as transparent as possible, that we're not part of a secret society if we are a member of a committee, make it as open and transparent as possible and as invitational, that this belongs to you. You know, it doesn't belong to the manager or to the committee, it belongs to you as a lot owner. And over time, that generates much more interest in participation, not only in the AGM, but all other events too. And look, the other thing, of course, is that obviously outside of those more formal channels, and they're very important if we do debureaucratise those forums, but also, of course, where the chairperson and committee members and the manager facilitate forums around key issues, and often bringing together external parties such as a local government representative. And then we build community, not for the sake of building community, simply because we are there to generate good outcomes in the interest of all.
Excellent. So that sort of brings us to the end of our session today and for the year. And it's been great, again, catching up and talking about efficient and effective communities, and that very important thing of building community, one of all three of our passionate subjects, that's for sure. So that leaves us for next year. We've added social media as one of our topics that we will talk about. We've already got EVs for Catherine. We're going to talk about EVs and building EV readiness. Plus, we've still got just the two more topics to unpack, which was to do, both of them are basically to do with induction, the importance of inducting new committee members in, and also then that handover to a new committee. So they're our first lot of topics that we'll be starting off with next year. Like to wish Catherine and Nick all the best for Christmas, and thank you again for being on the journey. And everyone on the call today, all have a wonderful, safe, happy festive season with family and friends, and stay safe.
Merry Christmas.